but have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or
Yes.
Lourdes? And so it's the healing waters of Lourdes, and they saw so many people getting better from this water, and they thought it was placebo. So they started tracking people and realizing that people were really overcoming medical issues. Well, the Japanese discovered through a lot of research that that water has high levels of molecular hydrogen. So I thought that was very interesting.
That's
And
fascinating. Because they're documented by the church. People don't know that. Like they're listed as miracles, under it's fine, great, but that's really interesting that's because it's the hydrogen. Greg, thank you for welcome to the show. And we're just having an extensive off-air conversation, and we thought we better start it rolling.
happens.
Yeah, it does happen. Look, water is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I've had a number of people on predominantly talking about structured water and the benefits of spring water. And something that is gaining more and more popularity is hydrogen water.
Yeah.
For its longevity, for its healing benefits, yet it's still fairly, I would say it's still in the West anyway, it's very much falls into a bit of cowboy land in terms of what's out there with products. It's not very clear what even it's potentially used for. Like we were just discussing, there's many studies, it's well studied in Japan and the best machines are made in Japan, but I've not seen it trickle through into the West, the foundational research. I'll see a lot of people just, on socials saying, buy this bottle because it will help hydrate you, but without actually understanding anything more. But I'd like to start with your journey to discovering and your research into hydrogen water and how you got to where you are.
Well, I mean, it really started with me having like major medical issues. And the medical issues that I had were so severe. I mean, I had, let's see here, let's go down the list. There's so many of them. I did have a heart condition that was really bad. I was told it was going to end my life and that I needed open heart surgery. I also had an autoimmune issue, so lots of inflammation, massive amounts of pain to the point where I couldn't even walk. So I'd be bedridden for months at a time. I couldn't even use a remote control for a television. My joints hurt so bad. So I was kind of having all this inflammation and arthritis, basically. My liver and my kidneys were not really doing super well. I wasn't having failure, but they just weren't optimal. A lot of different gut issues. Obviously, my immune system was absolute garbage. I did even have some tumors in my body. And like I said, basically just a lot of pain. I even had some on scans that were seeing my bones basically withering away very rapidly. And so there was just so many things, that were just clearly not good. And so I was just suffering a lot. And I worked in the medical establishment for like 2 decades, maybe a little bit more. And so I knew Western medicine, how it works. I worked with numerous doctors, specialists for years. I know the system quite well. So when I got sick, I was just like, oh no, here we go. Because I know how it goes down and it's frustrating. And so I didn't really have a choice. I'm like, look, I'm either going to let this kind of quote unquote kill me, or I'm going to have to do something to try to overcome these issues. And then I had to do a lot of independent thinking because I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to different people about health. And honestly, it became very frustrating for me because you have one person saying, oh, this water is the best. And you got somebody else saying, oh, this water is the best. And then some other person will say, this supplement is the best supplement. And if you did what everybody told you to do, you'd end up with a cupboard full of different supplements. You would end up with a million different.
I've been there. Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, after looking at a lot of lab tests, I'm like, taking these supplements is not going to be good for you. If anything, it's going to put a strain on your kidneys. And this is not going to help my body repair. And so, I went down this journey where I had to find my way. And I tried so many things, so many diets, so many supplements, so many machines, spent a massive amount of money, basically all my life savings. I couldn't work because, when you're crazy sick, there's just no way that I could work. And so it was really a nightmare is what it really turned out to be. And then that's how I had to find my way out. And I had to do a lot of independent thinking. So like, for example, you were talking about what the best water is. And again, some people might say, hey, it's spring water. Somebody else might say it's some other type of water. My thought process was, what do I want out of my water? And what I really want is I just want my water to be clean. Can I just get clean water? So I started looking at that. In fact, I even have here a third party lab test. And I've looked at a lot of lab tests of what's in our water. And
Mm.
there's pages of all this stuff that's in our water and learning how to filter it out. And then I would look at the science, obviously lab tests, but I would also observe nature. So if I were to give you one example, do you know how nature purifies water?
Is it through the process of motion and vortexing?
No.
No.
And the whole thing about structured water, I've looked at the lab tests. So I've
Mm.
seen actual data from Japan. Personally, I think structured water is way overrated. Like
Mm.
way over. It's not going to transform your life. That's just my opinion based on data. And it's clearly not medically approved or any of this stuff. And we can go into why. I can tell you what I saw in the lab reports. I literally just spoke to a water specialist yesterday because he saw me on a show and he's like, dude, everything you said was right. I had to talk to you. And we had a actually long conversation about structured water in the lab reports. But the way that nature purifies water starts with hydrogen action because it starts with a star, which we call our sun. So the sun hits the ocean, water gets hot and starts rising up, like the steam,
Mm.
and it's a process of almost like distillation. And you can even find answers sometimes in ancient scriptures. So, like, even crazier, rain and snow is actually distilled water. And there's even Bible verses or other scriptures that say things like pure as the driven snow, pure as white as snow, the purity of it. So I started looking at all the lab tests of water being filtered, whether it was filtered through carbon filters, reverse osmosis filters, or other filtration modalities, or bottled water, or natural spring water, or well water, or artesian wells. I've looked at so many lab reports, and basically, no water was perfectly clean except for water that went through the process of carbon distillation, which is a combination of distilling and using carbon. And that's where this lab report actually, that's exactly what it proves. So if I were to give you an example, like none of us want, for example, you probably can't see this, but uh, PFAS in our water. This is,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
PFAS
Yeah.
forever chemical. And then it shows a number that was in the water, and then after going through carbon distillation, if you notice, everything's at a
Zero,
zero.
zero, zero.
So when it goes through carbon distillation, it is the only way to completely purify your water, and not just from contaminants. One of the things I learned a lot of things about studying water. One of the things that shocked me about water is that the lab results was showing that they had, if you can,
Radioactive contaminant. Yeah, for people who are listening, it
yeah,
terrifyingly says radioactive contaminants. Now, are we talking tap water? What water are we talking here, by the way, that was taken
all,
from?
all
All water.
because unless it's gone, obviously, look, like bottled water, for example, bottled water is typically just gone through a carbon filter, typically.
Hmm.
And bottled water has the highest level
Hmm.
of microplastics than any water there is.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
That's in itself. And that's just one thing. Radioactive contaminants kind of blew my mind. And who does it affect the most?
Yeah,
They
babies, children.
children. Why? Because their organs are not fully developed yet. So
Hmm.
their liver, their kidneys. So they're the ones that are higher risk. And then on top of it, people don't realize that water filters don't really remove every bacteria, every
Hmm.
parasite. They don't remove all these, biological contaminants. Carbon distillation does.
Hmm.
So, and by the way, then we get into parasites in our water. This removes all that too, and it's not even expensive. I mean, in your country, it'd probably be a different website. But if people always ask me, so what do you use? I'm just going to tell people now, so that way, if people end up wondering, there's a website called mypurewater.com. You don't have to use this one. This is what I use. If people want a discount code too, they can use the code uprising144K. That's a discount code if they want one. But you can get one of these things. They're American made. They do a lot of good lab testing because their machines, they're doing really good stuff. And they use higher grades, higher components of like stainless steel and whatnot. And because they want that higher quality water. And you could get a Chinese machine for maybe a few $100s cheaper, but you can get one of these with a discount code for like 500 and something bucks. And to me, That is a very small price
That's pretty
for
cheap.
the cleanest water. And then I've developed protocols. So I've developed protocols using super clean water that you wouldn't be able to do, or you shouldn't do, with other water because it can actually kill you or harm you. So I'll give you an example. This is really important. Have you ever heard of a neti pot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you heard people dying from the neti pot?
No, just for people who don't know, a neti pot's for clearing your sinuses through. So you run water through your nose, one nostril to the next. It's very big in the East. I didn't know people. How do they die from doing a neti
Be-
pot? The
because
water's
they
so
didn't
dirty.
they didn't read the directions, and the
Okay.
directions clearly state only use distilled water. Why? Because if you're running water through your sinuses, you can literally get a parasite in your brain. You get some bacteria. You can have all sorts of crazy stuff. And this has happened to people. They'll get a little thing in their brain and they don't even know it's there for months and months and months. This thing is slowly eating away at your brain. This has happened to people. And so,
That's a terrifying thought.
yes, it is. And that's why I say it as much as I do, because anybody who's ever used it, which, by the way, I'm a fan of the neti pot. I love the neti pot. I love cleaning the sinuses when you need that, if you got a cold or something. But you don't want to use the wrong water. And if the water is safe for your sinuses, what other way can this water be used? And I've created so many protocols. I've worked with people. It's so crazy, some of the stuff that I've seen, including dementia and Alzheimer's. It shocks me what I've been able to do just with my understanding of water and hydrogen. I'm shocked that the world doesn't know. I mean, doctors don't really know about this at this point. I've been doing this for so long. There's doctors who have contacted me with numerous questions because they're like, how in the world are you achieving this? And then just recently there was a healing center, and the guy there has been contacting me and he's been wanting to know my protocols. So I've been sharing some stuff with him, and he started applying it to the patients. Well, these patients had been seeing other doctors for years without
Mm.
really getting almost any results for numerous different issues. Well, these people started getting the most amazing results, and all their doctors started noticing. Now this guy is bringing in MDs into his healing center because they want to know what he's doing, and they're starting to even like send them business. And it's not the most complicated thing in the world. You just need to understand. There's certain things that you need to understand. But I mean, like I said, yes, traumatic brain injuries and Alzheimer's and dementia, but also things like, I mean, I've worked with people and I've seen, even with my own family members, cholesterol issues go away, blood pressure, diabetes, glaucoma, macular degeneration, torn retinas, even cataract issues, brain fog, even improvement on certain like dental issues, hearing issues, lung issues, in regards to people who have. There was one guy who smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 50 years. So he had some issues with lungs that I worked with, and skin issues. And there's so many things. And I'm just shocked. I never thought that I would be that guy, because I wasn't really wanting to be a health guru, quote unquote. I wasn't like a biohacker and this is what I want to do. I had zero interest in any of that kind of stuff. But when my life ended up being on the line and I was crazy sick and my life was basically over, I had to find a way. And one thing about my personality is like, I'm really good at figuring things out, actually, but my heart has to be in it. I just can't figure something out unless it's like really got to be in my heart. And when that happens, I'm pretty good at it. And I broke it all down, and to the point where, like, people who, these little like hydrogen products, I hate to say it, but clearly a lot of these companies don't like me because I revealed the truth about this stuff.
Mm.
At least the truth in my opinion, because I can't make claims or anything, and I don't make claims. But like, you were talking about hydrogen pills earlier. I can't believe that anybody in their right mind would recommend them, let alone take them. And I say with the highest, with all due respect, because like I said, this guy recently contacted me who runs a lab, and he lab tested them, and he got back to me and he's like, dude, this is crazy. How are these even on the market? And I'm like, well, and I could tell you a lot of things that don't even make sense about the hydrogen pills, but not a lot of people talk about it. Like, let's talk hydrogen just for a second.
Yeah, let's go to why hydrogen. What? So just to pedal back slightly. So
Yeah.
ostensibly, would you say you've completely cured yourself with the protocols you put in place predominantly focused on hydrogen, water, or hydrogen?
Well,
So,
I overcame not only these medical issues, including my heart thing. I never needed a heart surgery. Never got it. No scar. Never had the heart surgery, and my condition's gone. The
mm,
cardiologist was blown away because I was going to get scheduled to have surgery.
mm,
I was blown away by that. I didn't think that my heart condition was going to go away. I didn't think the protocols that I was creating were going to work the way that they've been working. Never thought in a million years that I would be able to, achieve something like that. And the interesting things about hydrogen, though, let's just to clarify for everybody. First, we're talking about molecular hydrogen. So we're not talking about some other type of hydrogen. Why molecular hydrogen? All the scientific evidence points to that. It doesn't point to Brown's gas. It doesn't point to some other type of hydrogen. Molecular hydrogen is where the data is at that really supports. That's why when I see data, I use that data to apply to my protocols. I don't just make stuff up, you know. So I get really good data or something that just makes sense. Like again, like the cleanest water, right?
mm.
So molecular hydrogen is a gas. Okay, great, fine. If you dissolve this gas into water, which is what we call hydrogen water, molecular hydrogen is pH neutral. So if you see a machine that's like, oh, it turns the water alkaline and it's full of hydrogen,
Nice.
it's already doing it wrong.
Mm.
Because molecular hydrogen is pH neutral. If you do it correctly, which the best machine in the world, which happens to be a Japanese one, followed all the science. And they quickly became the number one machine in all of Japan and later in the world, which is called Alorda's Hydrofix, where people want to just look at it or read about it. The official company website, so you don't get scammed. The official site is called holyhydrogen.com. Now, this device, so pH neutral, molecular hydrogen is also odorless, colorless, and tasteless. So these are the 4 attributes of molecular hydrogen. Now let's just use the pills as an example. When you drop them in water, does the pH stay neutral? No. The water becomes highly acidic. I don't know if you know that. But those pills are making the water highly acidic and messing with the pH balance. That's one problem. 2, is it odorless? No. Once you put those pills there, it smells like crap, to be quite honest. I can't believe people drink it. 3, tasteless. No. The water tastes clearly like metal. And by the way, if you're worried about heavy metals, taste like metal, you might want to get a lab test, bro. I'm just saying. I already see what. I don't want to make any claims because these companies that sell these things attack me all the time. They try to throw legal action at me and they're like, you can't say this, and so, whatever. In my opinion, they're making money. They don't care about people. This is just another supplement out in the world of supplements. And in my personal opinion, I was able to overcome my issues using almost no supplements. So I think most supplements are useless or worse, potentially bad.
Yeah.
So that's a fundamental issue. So, and then the very last thing, so let's see, odorless, colorless, tasteless, and pH neutral. And the pills don't literally do not one of those things. It doesn't fulfill one thing of the true attributes of hydrogen. Is there any hydrogen in them? Clearly, it goes through a chemical reaction. That's not how I want my hydrogen. They don't give people hydrogen pills in the medical field in Japan when there's an emergency. That's not what they do. Nobody uses those things medically in their right mind in Japan. In other places they are because they don't know. So everybody's recommending them. Everybody's using them. They're all over the place. But if people saw a lab report, it would scare you. After what I saw, it scared me. I couldn't believe it. It was actually worse than what I thought when this guy did the lab report and he showed me. And he was shocked. He's like, dude, I can't believe this.
Could you disclose some of what's in it? Is it heavy metals? What's the? I mean, the acidic thing you brought up before is bad enough. The fact that it's creating acidity within the water.
It's not the biggest thing to worry about, though. There's something in there that the only reason I don't want to say is because
litigation.
Because of all the facts, I spoke with a lawyer because they made me. I had to speak to a lawyer. And the lawyer basically said, your best bet is if you ever want to disclose it, just show the lab report. And I don't have it printed out.
Well, they should have their own lab reports, for God's sake. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. I think I don't even want to speculate. All I'll say is there is no hydrogen pill that I would ever take that is not the correct way of making hydrogen. There is no pill or technology currently in existence that does it, in my personal opinion, correctly. Maybe someday in the future, maybe there's something that will be developed, but there is nothing at this time. And I've learned every method and modality of making hydrogen, and also of every modality of how to truly purify water. So these two things were fundamental for me overcoming my medical issues. And then, of course, I did some stuff with diet and different things, but it was mostly clean water, hydrogen.
And,
Those were
and,
the.
and let the body heal itself. Could you just explain before we, because I'd love to dive into what we just touched upon, like what is the best way to create hydrogen, the process that you would use to create it. So in terms of distilling them hydrogenating it, but could you just give a very quick overview as to why and how hydrogen is important and how it's actually working mechanistically within the body to heal?
Yeah, so the first thing is obviously what we do know, because do we know the full mechanism of hydrogen? No. Nobody in the world knows exactly how. I like to simplify. I mean, we know that it appears to function as a selective antioxidant. And by the way, it's a very special antioxidant. We should come back to that too.
Yeah.
Second, we know that it appears to function as, it seems to work as an anti-inflammatory. It helps with cell signaling. Some of the very first research done on it had to do with the mitochondria and how amazing it was or is for mitochondria, which is really important because, in my personal opinion, many diseases are mitochondrial dysfunction. And in my personal opinion, again, that includes cancer. And so this thing improves mitochondrial function, which is also important. And the way that it appears to protect like DNA, but just the body in general. Like I got so many videos that I posted, and everything's free. I give everything away for free on my channel. The YouTube channel is called Uprising 144K. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll leave everything we're talking about. I'll leave in the link offs.
But video number 8 it's one of the things that I love about hydrogen. There's a lot of things to love, but I can tell you the things that I've seen it do. One of them, it appears to be very protective. So there's numerous different studies that they've done on this, but on video number 8, they're showing cells being exposed to chemotherapy when with or without hydrogen. And the difference is massive. I mean, we were seeing 90% cellular destruction without the hydrogen. With the hydrogen, we saw only 10% cellular destruction. And that is huge.
Yeah,
for people,
that's incredible.
Think of a car that's 90% rusted versus 10% rusted. It's huge, right? And so that's just one example. I mean, another one, probably to me, one of the most powerful ones is a drug called cisplatin. I don't know if you've ever heard of this drug.
Say it again.
Cisplatin.
Yeah.
And it's an anti-tumor drug that destroys your kidneys.
Yeah.
Go look at this study, because a lot of doctors don't even recommend that drug, because if you take it for cancer, well, now you're going to have kidney failure. And now you're going to need most likely a kidney transplant. And it's just terrible. But if you look at this study, you can go look for it. They used cisplatin while using hydrogen. And it protected the kidneys so much that it appears, I don't make claims, that you could potentially use this particular drug that might be helpful for you, who knows, and still walk out with your original kidneys. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And if hydrogen can protect you to that level, imagine how it protects you from toxins potentially in your food, toxins in your home potentially, toxins in the air. We are bombarded with so much stuff lately that for it just to protect us from that, to me, is a very, very big deal. Not to mention, and this is you were asking me how it works. This is one of my personal theories. Hydrogen, in my opinion, is light. It's not just light. It's life. And I'll explain why it's life in a second too. It's really interesting. You're basically found a way to bring light into the body, like pure light that won't in my personal opinion, harm you if done correctly. You don't want the byproducts. That's why I'm not a fan of these type of things, because they're made in
Yeah,
China. They plated
Greg.
metals.
Just
The
for
met-
people listening, you're holding up one of those small hydrogen bottles that probably quite a few people would have seen advertised.
or I would show the pills too. Like
Yeah.
there's a off those pills. I wouldn't inhale that.
Hmm.
And if but yet you want to drink it, like it just doesn't even make any sense. And when it comes to gases, this is important for everybody to understand. When it comes to gases, and ask any medical professional, high purity is super important when it comes to gases. Water is very similar. So think about this. If you drink water and there's something in there that shouldn't be in there, I mean, it's going through your stomach, which is designed to be acidic, by the way, because your stomach can kill pathogens. And that's part of the reason that it should be acidic. This is why I'm not a fan of water ionizers that alkalinize water, like the
Yeah,
King.
yeah, no, yeah, it's not a
Not
good idea.
And a lot of people get upset about it because they're like, there's scientific data. What they don't understand is there's a difference between short term data and long term data.
Hmm.
And the whole reason that the Kangans were having positive data at the beginning with short term was because the machines were by accident making some hydrogen. It had never had anything to do with the water being
I've
alcohol.
heard this before. Yeah.
And so people don't know this. Now, the Japanese figured that out. And during long research, they found out that these Kangen machines were causing issues with the GI system because it was messing with your stomach acids. And I've known so many people who use that machine, including myself. It never fixed me, which is why I was like not very happy, because they're so expensive. And then you realize I shouldn't even be drinking this, at least in my opinion, right? Not to mention it has filters. And this guy who's a water specialist did these lab tests on the filters for the Kangans. Oh, brother, the things I saw in there too. I'm like, oh my God, So we got to be so cautious these days. But
Hmm.
come back to why hydrogen is life, though, because I think this answers the question that you asked. How exactly is it doing what it's doing? Because if we were to say, well, what does water do? Man, we'd be here all day. The amount of things that water does, I mean, you're going to be all day. And people don't know that the word hydrogen actually means that which becomes water. Okay. So we're talking about literally the essence of water. H2O, H2 is 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. It's mostly hydrogen, right? And so clearly we want to dissolve the gas. But the reason that I believe that it's the life molecule, there's many reasons that I've come to that conclusion, but this is one of the fascinating ones. If you were to have a stroke, and I've worked with lots of people who have strokes, and I got some amazing testimonials, but we'll get into that in a second. Let's say you're not getting proper blood supply to your brain. So you're literally not getting blood to an area of your brain. Well, what happens when you don't get blood to the area that should be getting it?
Hmm.
It dies, right?
Hmm.
Like if I put a rubber band around my arm and I don't get blood into my arm's going to die. It's going to turn purple and die. So what the Japanese discovered is that if you inhale pure hydrogen gas, it will literally go to that part of the brain and keep it alive without blood. Now, you have to understand how big of a deal this is, because there's even ancient scriptures that say something like life is in the blood, right? I think what it actually is it's the hydrogen within the blood, because blood is a lot like water, and it's like designed to have dissolved gases in it. So, for example, if you go to the doctor and they say, hey, we want to test your oxygen saturation levels, we're talking about a gas, oxygen, that is saturated in your blood, right? So it's a gas in your blood. So nature is kind of designed like this. So anyway, in Japan, you'll go to and not all hospitals, but there's, I believe, just almost about 30 of them that use they're university hospitals. They use molecular hydrogen medically. So it's a big deal that if it's approved in Japan, man, they go through a lot of scrutiny, right? So we know it's the real deal. So when somebody says, well, I'm going to wait for my doctor to prescribe it, it's like, you might be waiting 10 or 20 years. You'll be dead by then. The good news is that, you can actually have this at home. Thank God, because of this Japanese guy who developed the device. But the point is, so you go to the hospital, they restore blood supply. 99% of people or more make a full recovery because they kept the part of the brain alive. And then, you restore blood supply and then you're back to normal. To be able to keep something alive in the body without blood is a huge thing. And so that's one of the reasons that I think that it brings life, it brings light into the body. And then it enhances everything else that you're doing. So one of the other crazy stories I have for you is I'm really big on the other. This is the other way I help myself overcome my medical issues. Overcoming all nutritional deficiencies, and that includes minerals. Why did I choose to do that? Because I saw the science, I saw the data. So we know that deficiencies most likely lead to certain medical problems. So if I give you one example, like if you are deficient in vitamin C, you're going to get scurvy. That's what happens. How do you fix scurvy? Do you need some awesome pharmaceutical drug? No, you just get vitamin C, you get your levels.
Yeah.
Scurvy goes. So when I was trying to find my way back to health, I wanted to overcome all nutritional deficiencies just in case that was one of the problems, right? That's how I tackled my issues. One of the things that I discovered by accident was that hydrogen appeared. I mean, it's so good for the gut, by the way. So I've seen people who have Crohn's disease, celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, all sorts of gut issues. I've seen them just disappear with hydrogen. The science is amazing on the gut. So, and ultimately almost 80% of our immune system's in our gut. So it's kind of like if you want to improve your health, right? So one of the things I didn't realize though was how efficient my body was going to become. So the most recent blood work I got, because I get blood work throughout the years regularly, because I wanted to see where my deficiencies lied in order for me to try to work on them so that I could have no nutritional deficiencies was my goal, which is highly unusual because everybody
generally has something. Yeah.
Right. So I knew it was a big task, but I modified my protocols, trying to figure it out, achieve my goal. And every time I would get blood work, everything was basically looking perfect. And the last one I got was crazy because when you work in the medical field, at least in the Western world, I know that when a doctor calls you from a result, it's a bad thing. They will always tell you pretty much, we won't call you if there's no problem, because otherwise we're calling everybody and saying everything's fine. So, if there's no phone call, that's good news. Now, if you get a phone call, though, that's where things get kind of creepy and scary, right? Sure enough, I get a call. And I was like, oh no. They're like, this is your doctor. I want to talk to you about the results. And I got really nervous. And I'm like, just tell me what it is. Hurry up. I'm nervous here. And this particular doctor, she just said, look, I've been doing blood work for over 3 decades. I've seen a lot of blood in my life. And I'm like, just tell me what I have. What did you find? She said, I've never in my life seen blood like yours. She said, it's so unbelievable. She goes, you have no deficiencies. She goes, this is nuts. She said, I had to call you. She said, I had to call you because I myself have patients, family members, and even myself, she said, with certain issues, some of them dealing with certain deficiencies, and I can't seem to fix them. She said, I can't fix it for everything that I've tried, throwing iron pills at people or whatever, all these different things. She said, how did you achieve this? She said, is there some magic pill that I'm not aware about? So I didn't even want to answer her because I knew my answer would end up being too long. And she kept pushing it. So I finally started to tell her, and I wasn't even a third of the way through. She just stopped me. She goes, oh, just stop. She goes, I didn't realize it would take work because I talk about clean water. I talk about hydrogen. Then I go into my diet. And then that's really lost it. She goes, wait. Because I don't like to talk about diet a lot because everybody has their own opinions and then everybody gets mad. And I really stay out of it. So I'm not going to say what my diet is. All I'm going to say is when I told her what it was, she couldn't believe it. She literally said, that is impossible.
Could you give us the fundamentals without going into the details? Because I know people will be thinking, is there a framework that's not going to piss too many people off?
You know how people are.
Oh, look, no, I've been into nutrition a very long time. I've got what people would consider as a weird diet. I consider completely normal, and the amount of hate you get for just mentioning it is pretty intense.
Exactly, and that's why I don't do it no more.
Yeah.
But all I'll say, we can maybe go into it later. All I'll say is, she literally said it's impossible to achieve what you're achieving with the diet that you're eating. And then she said, wait a second, how long have you been on this diet? Let me guess, you've been on it for a few months or 6 months or something, right? And I said, I've been doing it for a decade. And she was just like, I would have never believed you. She said, except for the fact that I have your lab reports right in front of me. She goes, this is unbelievable.
So, are you just eating French toast? I'm just kidding. I said, are you just eating French toast
No, well,
and
I,
donuts?
I can do one here. I mean, one of the big things that the average person doesn't think about nor talk about a lot, and this went, and I did it because of data from Japan. I followed these protocols that I created based on laboratory data. And what they discovered was some very interesting things. One, if you consume fiber from primarily vegetables, so we're not talking a supplement, okay? Because I don't do supplements pretty
Hmm.
much. Everything's about food. And if I do that, according to the study, it would literally help regulate your blood glucose levels for
Yep.
24.
Yeah, yeah. This is well studied. Have you read Fiber Fueled, a book just about the gut microbiome and the importance? Yeah. So this is not, and actually people curing their type 2 diabetes and helping with type 1 by purely eating high carbohydrates from plants.
Right.
Veg.
And so
Yeah.
a lot of people get weird about that. But the point is, I put it into practice because
Yeah.
fiber does way more than just regulating blood glucose. In fact, it does so many things that you would be an absolute fool not to do it if you're wanting to improve your health. And I'll tell you why. So, when you take a multivitamin, how you tend to just pee out a bunch of those nutrients anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Because your body can't absorb it all, right? What I don't think people realize is that fiber, so think about the food that God gave us,
Yeah.
or nature, whatever
Yeah.
you want to.
Yeah.
So you look at a beet or an apple or spinach or whatever. It has fiber, it has minerals, it has antioxidants, has phytonutrients, and of course it has protein and all sorts of different things. But those things paired together work synergistically and just beautifully. And the fiber, so the research study led to new knowledge, which was discovered by the Japanese,
Hmm.
about how the human body is constructed. So we learned something about the body, which I think is very important. Always learn more about this vessel, right, that we're living in.
Hmm.
And I won't go into what they learned, but it has to do with microscopic holes in our GI system and where these fibers get kind of trapped and they get released little by little, like a time release. So it allows you time to absorb those minerals. It helps me with the absorption of the nutrients. It's almost like you're taking in less nutrients, but you're more efficient. It's kind of like a car. It's like a gallon of gas for a Prius. The Prius is going to go 50 miles, whereas the muscle car is going to go 6 miles.
Hmm.
It's just more efficient on the same amount of fuel. And so I began to make my body more efficient. I didn't even realize that this is what I was doing, but I was making it much more efficient. And it's clearly been working. And I've used it on so many people that are, circles of friends, family, people suffering. I do consults now too, which I don't like doing, to be quite honest with you. But when somebody really needs help and is suffering, I have a hard time saying no, because that was the whole reason I started doing what I'm doing, is to help other people, because so many people need help and they run out of ideas. They've tried so many things. They spend a lot of money, and
Hmm.
it's sad. But anyway, so on and on we go. But go
No,
ahead.
but
I didn't.
no, no.
Yeah.
I was just going to say because it's we're probably without. I've done. I'm going to say similar to what you've done for like a couple of decades as well, and more recently gone predominantly raw with just eating fruits and vegetables and in a really pure form. And I don't want to get into like people can. Yeah, I was good before that, but what I've noticed in the last 2 years of even doing that, like I have to eat far less. I've actually never felt I don't get sick. I don't. My fitness has gotten to a stage where it's crazy. My body composition and the ability for my body to eliminate toxins and to repair, and I actually eat less, way less food because my body. And the only thing I can think is that my body's absorption is far greater from the food I am eating. Uh, so
But
it's
you,
pretty. Sorry.
well, not to interrupt you, but you always want to, if you can, get the blood work that
Yeah,
tests.
I should get. Yeah, well, my general look, my general thing that I've always used is like how I'm going off how I feel, and if I feel really good, then it's a pretty good feedback mechanism that things are working. And I mean over the long term because I know people can say I feel great, I felt great, whatever, eating X for 3 months, and then all of a sudden 6 months later they're in diabolical straits of their body just quits. So absolutely, it's that's good, but. I guess from my perspective, I've done it. I'd already done it for decades prior that I was comfortable with. But I would be, yeah, I do need to. Don't want to go too far off track, but yeah, I will be doing that in the future just to see, because it's also a good metric to show other people, I guess, if you're advocating something to give them the labs.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
mine is also, I mean, some of the research, a lot of people don't know this either. I don't know if you've ever seen the research about when people would eat, like if you eat meat once in a while,
Mm.
the way that your body reacts is different as compared to if you eat meat basically regularly.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
most people. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I was shocked about this. So the study basically proved, like for me, like once in a while, I will have an egg or two eggs.
Mm.
Once in a while. I don't do it all the time. And this is again based on data. I will have one because what happens is I'll go somewhere like in Japan, they make the best ramen. In Japan, it's just unbelievably good. So, I'll go and have a bowl of ramen and then it comes with an egg. Okay, I'll make an exception. I'll have an egg. It's no big deal. I just make sure not to do it regularly.
Mm.
And by doing this, again, my body becomes very efficient. And you can actually, again, utilize some of the stuff that's in that egg. But also, this is another really key point that I use myself is before you eat certain things, like if you know you're going to eat a steak, which is totally fine. Let's say you want to have a steak. I don't get on people for eating meat or anything. Make sure to have a lot of vegetables first. And also, what I do, my part of my protocol is I'll have the hydrogen water first. So I have the hydrogen water first, empty stomach, 30 minutes before the meal because of the way the hydrogen protects the body, aids with digestion, um, but also protects me from potentially certain harmful things that are in the food. Then you take in the vegetables. The Japanese did a study on this because of all the antioxidants, fiber, enzymes in the vegetables that help once the meat comes into your stomach. Because the meat doesn't really have any fiber to help break itself down, for example.
Protein, bro, protein. Sorry, I don't want to go.
I know,
It's just like, yeah. No, no, I wait. I'm not going to drag you into my mud.
but I know what you're talking about,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you can use the magic of water, by the way. You can use water with meat and bone to pull out really amazing nutrients, and that's what we call it broth. Obviously, you can have really amazing broths sometimes. And the Japanese make these broths, man, they're unbelievable. Like they literally have been they have the base and they've been making the same broth from this base for years. And they just keep, cycling through it. So they do some really amazing things here in
Mm,
Japan. Anyway,
mm.
I could talk on and on about that. So sorry about that.
No, no. Look, it's incredible. Before we jump into the devices and I would love to just touch upon some of the framework for the protocol for people to, and or just some starting points for how they can begin their journey down this path. But it's amazing still when I speak to people, and I mentioned before we started, I've got a number of people currently who are experiencing health difficulties, chronic illnesses, or ongoing poor health. That when you mention, have you thought about water? And a common, look, maybe they'll say, oh, look, I'm filtering the water, it's fine. Or even not even getting to that point, people will think that water is just a throwaway thing, which if you actually just stop and think about that for a second, water is the predominant substance that our bodies are comprised of, like 99.9% molecularly speaking, and also, depending on your age, up to, 50 to 75, 80% literally water in you. And as you said, blood is water, so you could almost go higher than that. So to look at water as the number one intervention that's going to begin that your body has formed its health around is a completely logical viewpoint to have. And
I
it's
agree.
amazing to me that people, we're so brainwashed to think that the water that comes out of a tap is fine. Water is just a inanimate chemical that we don't, that our bodies just, drink your eight glasses a day and you'll be fine. And even to the point, like when I look at, okay, so I don't know how much you know about Brian Johnson. If you jumped on, you obviously do, yeah. But I mean, and there's now a real swell that I'm seeing of just this, I don't want to die, which is a whole other conversation. But like, Death is like somewhat essential to life, but we all want to live longer lives and live healthier, longer lives. So, like, I'm definitely on that bandwagon, and look, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but even within our community, water is not really the center point. In fact, it's barely,
Wow.
with Brian Johnson's point, he barely ever discusses it, and it's just like that to me is mind boggling. So it's we're
Foundation.
what it's foundational, but everyone seems to be missing it, apart from these small pockets of water researchers who are often, in the larger context of healthcare, are marginalized. And it's left to the individual to find this, what would be. So our conversation, if I'm going to send this to people, who I will, they will still consider this fringe. Which, look, I can't change. No, I know I can't. And as we were saying before we started as well, it's also, I don't know why it's not more widely known, but in Japan, this is well researched stuff. This is
Yep.
not. This is like, the fact that we're not researching it doesn't make it illegitimate. It means we're missing something.
And we should clarify this. We're not talking about like they did 5 research studies on hydrogen water, or 10, or
Mm.
100, or 200. There's over 2,000 studies at this point. It's
Wow.
nuts. I mean, it's clearly, again, in my opinion at least, is legitimate. I even have a video 68. I show a live blood analysis. You can literally see what the blood does when you give it no water, when you give the body normal water, which was like spring water is what they used, and then you give it the hydrogen water. And they actually use the exact equipment that I use, because it is the best machine in all of Japan and basically in the world at this time, because nobody's invested enough to make a hydrogen machine like this because of technology that is required. And it's unbelievable. You can literally see it there for yourself. I had one doctor see that video and she said, that's impossible. And so she literally contacted me and she bought a machine, took it to her own lab, did her own study that was identical. She wanted to prove me wrong. She said, that's not possible. There's no way that's doing that to the blood. She thought it was a scam. And then she did the study and filmed it. And then she got back to me and she was like, oh my God, it worked. It did exactly what you showed on the video. And I've encountered this so much throughout the years that I've been doing this. And so
Mm.
anyway, there's just so much to go with. And there is a spiritual component. I mean, I won't go into that right now unless, eventually you want to talk about it. But it's wild how there's science and spirituality end up coming together.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, look, there's, when you were mentioning it creates light in the body, it's we are light beings. So then that's what we're this is from a mechanistic standpoint. Like, it's not some wild, but it's not some wild statement to make.
I want to say something about that because I think it's important.
Hmm.
I saw something really crazy about the effects of the sun on the human body skin, with and without hydrogen. It was a complete accident. And then my father noticed it. I started noticing it, and numerous viewers and testimonials who had contacted me. So this took years because nobody ever did a research study on this. And you know what we noticed? That the human body wouldn't burn. I used to walk out in the sun and I would get burnt, right? If I'm out there too long.
Hmm.
No screen, no nothing. Then all of a sudden, my dad and me started noticing that we weren't burning. And I was like, this is crazy. So I actually think that we're even able to absorb the light from the sun and able to utilize it more effectively as compared to just getting burnt, which is not good for us. It is not good to burn. We know it's not good. And it makes me think of a lot of like lifting weights. If you're strong enough to lift weights and gravity, it makes you stronger. You know, the whole adage of what doesn't break you makes you stronger. But if you're weak and you do it, it'll break you. It'll break your bone or whatever, And so it's very important to get your body strong. But I've noticed that hydrogen seems to have this beautiful quality of, you can absorb the light from the sun, you absorb your nutrients better, the body seems to become more efficient, it protects you. You should see the way that it appears to protect you from radiation. It's one of the things I wanted to, like, if I could contact Elon Musk, because he wants to go all the way to Mars. How are you going to get to Mars? Because how are people going to arrive there healthy? If people don't think about this, they don't realize this. Being in outer space for 24 hours, you get bombarded by the same amount of radiation as being on planet Earth for 6 months. It's massive overload on the body.
Yeah.
And
Well,
imagine
look.
traveling to Mars.
Well, look at. I think isn't it? I think pilots have the earliest death rate out of any profession, just given the amount of radiation they're copping from flying.
It's one of the reasons. Obviously, I load up on hydrogen, obviously before flying, for
Mm.
sure. Then I go without it, but it stores up in your body, so it's actually totally fine. But yes, you're right. You do get exposed to more radiation, when you're flying on an airplane, and it's obviously not very good. So
Yeah.
there's it's to me the hydrogen is the easiest thing. And you were saying that it was. Remember, you were talking about it being fringe, or people think that.
Yeah.
My dad was actually a beautiful example of this because my dad didn't want to. He had arthritis. He had issues, glaucoma. Diabetic or pre-diabetic. What's ironic is pre-diabetic in America, those same numbers in Japan, you're considered diabetic. But anyway, it all depends on the numbers that you're using.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he didn't want to change his life. He's like, look, I don't want to change the way I eat. I don't want to change the way that I live and going out to restaurants and having French fries and beer and cheeseburgers and I want to do whatever I want. He said, but what I'm willing to do, because he was on a medication that was really bad for him, called meloxicam. It destroys your liver. It causes arthritis. And just read the side effects. I'm not making claims. You can just go look at them. But I actually knew somebody who died from using that medication for too long. It caused them to have liver failure, which is that we know that it does this. In the medical field, we know that that's one of the side effects. So what my father did was he said, okay, I'm not going to follow any of your protocols, except I'm willing to drink the clean water. So I got him a carbon distiller. And he said, and I'm willing to put that hydrogen in it. So I got him one of the hydrogen machines. Just that, it was pretty amazing. And I don't even like saying this story because people tend to want to just do this, but his issues went away. And he didn't change anything. It was so impressive. I didn't actually think it was going to work. And when it did, it showed me the true power of hydrogen and what it can do. And not to mention the anti-aging part. Brian, what I don't understand about Brian Johnson is he's all about anti-aging. I tried to reach out to him to tell him about hydrogen. He doesn't seem to care. Recently, he got on HBOT, on oxygen therapy, which I'm going to bet to wager. I'm not saying oxygen's bad, but if I were to make a bet, I don't think he's going to see much anti-aging from oxygen, only because people don't realize that, in my personal opinion, oxygen is an oxidant. And there are benefits to oxygen. But if you really want to use oxygen properly, like typically what you do is you actually give yourself less. So have you ever seen how pro athletes will do like high altitude training?
High altitude training, yeah.
And your body produces more red blood cells and all this stuff. And then you can give yourself a big amount of oxygen after doing that, but you can't do it long.
Yeah. Well, it's for your mitochondria and your NAD. Like it's actually NAD production. It's good to actually be deprived of oxygen. So your body. That's why when you're exercising, you're out of breath. It's amazing for your body post that because it floods it with growth hormone.
And I'm not against the oxygen. It's just that I've developed very different protocols, and I've used oxygen in my protocols, and it didn't work that good. It was very short results that didn't really last very long.
Yeah.
That's great. And there are, in my opinion, medical ways to use oxygen, but I can't really do it all the time. Kind of like fasting. Fasting's great for maybe a week or 5 days or whatever, but you don't want to fast for 60 days. It depletes you of these nutrients. It ends up not being very good for you to go too long, But hydrogen appears to be kind of different. Hydrogen's kind of like the fruits and the vegetables. Like you can eat those every day, get those antioxidants, get that fiber. I didn't mean to. I just have
no. I just want to quickly, before we go on to the devices, you mentioned earlier about the antioxidant effect of hydrogen. Do you want to just touch on that for people and to give a framework for someone who's completely new to it? I mean, you would have heard antioxidants, but
yes,
what we need to clean up our bodies.
This is really important. I kind of wish I don't have a visual, but make one up, I guess. So what people don't realize is antioxidants, actually, they're all different sizes. So people never think, oh, there's a size to it. So if I had a chart here, for example, and I had like vitamin E or vitamin C or glutathione or CoQ10, they're all different sizes. And I wish I had a chart for you. One of these days I'm going to have to print it out because I do mention this a lot. But hydrogen is super, super, super tiny.
Mm.
So it can basically get into any area in the body. It goes right past the blood-brain barrier, can get to the core of the mitochondria. Good luck getting CoQ10 into the
Mm.
mitochondria. It's like trying to get an elephant through a door. Like it's not going to happen. You know, the door's too small. And so that's the first thing about the hydrogen. And then the second part is that it appears to be a selective antioxidant, which is very different than something like vitamin C, which is just indiscriminately an antioxidant. And you don't always want that. The body is actually a balance of oxidants and antioxidants. So something that can self-regulate, which in my opinion, that's what hydrogen appears to do. It brings things back into balance because balance is where it's all at, right? And you're not going to balance it with oxygen. You're not just going to balance it just with food. Hydrogen really brings this beautiful balance to the body. And so those are the kind of the main points. And you have to remember that hydrogen has a massive amount of energy, but it's energy without one single calorie. It's
That's
crazy.
crazy.
It's totally crazy because people don't realize that. Okay, so there was an interesting study back in the day that basically showed with every meal you eat, you're actually aging.
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of like every time you
Yeah.
put gas in your car and you run the crap out of your car, you're wearing your car down more, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a terrible example, but anyway. The reason that this is important is because if you want some antioxidants, you literally have to consume an apple or spinach or whatever, something that has calories, right? I've never seen in my life something that is literally like air. It's just a gas. You don't consume any calories, and yet you're bringing in probably the best antioxidant known to man. So it's just bonkers that you can do this. And of course, it's been shown to be. I saw an interesting study in Japan about it being anti aging. I don't know how much you want to know about it, but all I'll say is that
Hit me with that. Yeah. No, I'm big on that. Yeah.
this particular study was done with very clean hydrogen water, proper levels, and they took a guy, it was a Japanese guy, and they told him, don't make any changes to your lifestyle. Eat the way you
Mm.
always eat. Don't change anything. Okay. Took his blood, and in Japan, they can literally look at your blood and tell you roughly what age you. They looked at his blood. He drank hydrogen water every day for 1 year. Checked his blood after 1 year. His blood was 5 years younger, and he changed nothing except for
Anything else?
hydrogen water. So that's also pretty impressive. And you have to realize that with aging comes disease. So like I'll give you a statistic. Let's say that this is how long I'm going to live, from beginning to end, right? And this is a pile of money that only gets spent on medical issues. Okay. The statistics show that in the last 10 years of your life, you will spend 90% of all the money you'll ever spend on healthcare in the last 10 years of your life. Why? Because with age comes medical problems, right? And the average person doesn't realize that the older you get, the more dehydrated you are also, on top of everything.
The water people will say that aging is dehydration
It's
as
part of it.
well.
It's
Yeah.
not all of it, but it definitely plays a role. And what I'm trying to say is anything that really would be amazing for our health or the true life molecule
Mm.
would clearly be anti-aging and would only make sense.
Mm.
And the lab results appear to show us just that. The only problem is that most people don't ask how to put it into their bodies. And clearly you were taking the pills and I'm like, oh no, dude.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified. Well, it's also when you look at, and this is probably another topic, but it'd be great to have you back because there's so much. I feel like we're only scratching the surface of your knowledge on this, and there's so many different ways we could go. But so I've looked at the holy hydrogen machines before, and I've somewhat put it off because I think I don't want to invest that much money in another device when I've done that before for a whole host of things. But then what you just said about the cost of being unhealthy, and we don't factor that into these decisions. And if you go to you'll get a lot of pushback, including myself, when it's like you have to invest in this health thing. But there's so many other purchases that we don't question that money. And then it's also, when you're healthy, everything's dandy. But you ask any ill person, they would invest seriously ill person would invest any amount of money to get them healthy quick. And yet we don't think of a preventative approach to that. So you can avoid all those things just if you actually invest early.
And you're talking to a guy who, before I got sick, I never spent money on health stuff. I
Hmm.
never did. My motto was, I'm just going to work out because I used to be pretty athletic. Like, I'm just going to exercise and eat whatever I want. That was my motto. That's how simple it was. Once I got sick, and especially when I couldn't walk, man, I don't value almost anything above my health. My health is number one. I will spend the money on the machine that cleans my water to the best. I will get the best hydrogen machine. What's ironic what you mentioned about the money thing? It's kind of funny because the hydrogen pills are actually the most expensive
They're so
way.
expensive. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know, but you don't notice it because you're doing them. Yes.
Long-term
Yeah,
usage is not
yeah,
only the most expensive. Ironically, because I've done the breakdown financially, the Hydrofix, which is from the Holy Hydrogen website or company, the Japanese, that machine actually is the cheapest in the long term because people don't realize, like, I don't even like these, but these little bottles, they're made in China. They don't last that long.
yeah. Let's touch. I just want to go because I'll let you circle back to that, but just because you mentioned it, just because it's the third time I think you've held up the bottles. When you're discussing hydrogen water, and you'll see, and because our phones listen to us, you probably get an ad just because you listen to this podcast, and you invariably get one of those bottles pop up which you've held up, which is those small hydrogen bottles, which apparently you put water into it filters it, or it will produce hydrogen by bubbling. You'll see bubbles go through it, and they're very, very cheap. Um, and from my understanding of what you've said from your perspective, that the Holy Hydrogen machine is the only one which has been proven to be efficacious and produce what it says it does
Well, okay,
to
I won't.
to a very high standard. Sorry, I'm not putting words in it, but to a very high standard.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain why, but there's only three machines in existence that I would drink hydrogen from. Literally three.
Yep.
And if you go look around, there's probably hundreds, if not even into the thousands now, is how many machines are out there.
Yep.
If people are like, well, what am I supposed to look for? I would just here's a simple one. If it's made in China, in my opinion, I just stay away from it.
Mm.
Why? Well, the second question will be, do they use plated metals? And pretty much almost every device uses plated metals. And I don't know, people don't understand plating, but imagine metal that's plated and then you're running electricity through the water. What happens to the metal?
Mm.
And so, like plated metal, I'm not a fan. The Lourdes Hydrofix, the Japanese device, does not use plated metal. And they're the only machine in the entire hydrogen industry that doesn't. Is it more expensive? It's a way more expensive to do this. The plating of the metal is a cheap way to do it, not very high tech. And a perfect example was, it was so hilarious. I was talking to like this naturopathic doctor or whatever, and her husband is a jeweler. And he's always telling her about the purity of metal and how important it is. And she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So she bought these earrings, not listening to her husband. They were ironically from China. She just liked them, so she bought them. And she does blood work regularly too. And what all of a sudden shows up in her blood work? Metal toxicity. It was coming from her earrings. She didn't even realize it. I mean, that's how
Mm.
crazy it is. I mean, I'm sure people have bought, and especially women I've talked to who buy jewelry where it starts like oxidizing
Mm.
and it starts changing color or different things. This is not even sending electricity through it. Once you send electricity through water and you got metal going on, it's a big deal that I don't think people talk about enough. Just like the pills and that chemical reaction, people don't talk about it enough. And that's why I talk about it, because I think hydrogen is so beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful. I mean, look at all the stars in the sky. You do realize that the stars are made up of pretty much entirely hydrogen.
Mm.
How beautiful is that? Have you ever seen a waterfall, a beautiful river? I mean, it's hydrogen all around us, you know, and the way that it's an ascension molecule, not to get into the spiritual side, but people don't realize it's literally an ascension molecule. It's like a balloon. It ascends into the heavens. Oxygen doesn't. Oxygen drops to the ground, actually, you know. So they're very, and remember what I said about oxygen. Oxygen oxidizes. I'm not
Mm.
saying oxygen bad, people need to realize that oxidation is not always bad. So here's a stupid example, but have you ever seen like almost like skin exfoliation, or have you ever seen a car with bad paint and
Mm.
you oxidize it just on the surface to make it look brand new again to get to that to what's underneath, you know?
Yeah.
But if you do too much, you're going to go right through the paint and ruin it, right? That's what I think oxidation is like. It's helpful and it's all great, but antioxidation is a very important part of health. It's all your health is all about balancing oxidation and antioxidation. And then beyond that, it's about getting all your nutrients so you're not deficient. And then at that point, it's just exercise, proper sleep, basic stuff like that. Be in love, be happy, have a good life, be in a good mood, be kind, whatever, all this type of, I mean, it's not as complicated as I feel like people make it out to be. And I think that so much money has got into the industry. That's
Mm.
why there's garbage supplements and everybody's going nuts
Mm.
over it.
Mm.
They rather supplement than drink a good amount of water and be hydrated. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I mean, as you said, though, that confusion in any industry is how people profit. Because when people are confused, they make bad decisions.
That's a good point. And the confusion is what I felt when I was trying to find my way. Now that I found my way, I have my protocols, pretty simple way of living. And obviously I'm extremely happy, with the way
Mm.
that I'm these days, very grateful because I thought my life was over, to be honest. I thought it
Yeah.
was, you know,
Well, when you get that, but that's the thing with being happy and all these other tenets that people want in their life, gratitude and fulfillment.
yes,
If you're not nourishing the body, which is housing the soul in this incarnation, if you don't know how you want to go, but like
yeah,
it's very difficult to have those other aspects come to light. And inversely, like once the body is healthy and clean, all those other things sort of naturally start to emerge. Like it's hard. It's much harder to be miserable. You're literally creating that misery and unhappiness if you're otherwise healthy and clean. It's almost impossible because, as you said, if your body's filled with light, it's going to emanate light to a larger
absolutely.
extent. Yeah.
And that's really where a lot of this. So another big thing that I went through, I don't talk about it a lot, but I did go through major depression that started at a very young age. For me, it started around 8 years old, and
Yeah.
wanted my life to end. And sadly, I did a lot of things to my body attempting to do that. It's probably one of the reasons that I got sick because I poisoned myself multiple times. And it was really terrible. That's actually how I caused my heart problem. I wasn't born with a heart problem. I did some crazy things that were supposed to end me on this
Mm.
planet, and it damaged my heart. That's why I never thought that anything would fix it. I was pretty shocked when hydrogen did what it did. Now, granted, I tried hydrogen in other ways. I did try the pills originally because I didn't know any better, and I tried Kangen machines, and I tried the bottles. I tried a lot of things, and obviously they didn't work, and that was very frustrating for me. And then I had to learn more and realize that all of hydrogen, the way you create it, it's not all created equal, and proper protocols too. You don't just sip on the water. You need to know how to use it. And so I've realized obviously how important ultimately the stuff was, and it does affect your mood. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, we already have science actually now that proves it as far as the connection between the gut and
Mm.
quote happy chemicals in the brain. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. 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 What? Well, your gut literally is producing serotonin now, whereas previously they thought it was just all in the brain.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and it's mostly the gut.
And imagine the effects that we know what hydrogen does to the gut. So what do you think it does to the brain? And then things start getting really wacky. It took years though. But for me, I started having some very strange things begin to happen to me on a more spiritual front. And dare I say, I mean, I'm hesitant to say it, but like, I don't want to say psychic, but
Mm.
just this intuition and things that have happened to me, even visions. And I don't get into that because that's not totally scientific. So I tend to just want to help people with their medical issues and not go too far into it. But I mean, here another great discovery by the Japanese. You ever seen this book?
Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Emoto, yeah. Emoto's work.
Of course, who was it? A Japanese guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
I've,
he Masaru Moto, right?
yeah.
And the things that he learned about water, I've taken it to a whole other level that basically nobody really totally knows or understands. But the Japanese are masterful when it comes to water. The things that I've learned here are unbelievable. And this is just one of the smaller ones, but it's the easiest one. And not to beat that dead horse about the whole price thing, like I said, when you have a machine that lasts so many years and doesn't just make the water, yes, it makes the water, in my opinion, it's the best hydrogen water in the world. And down from the nanobubbles to the purest metals to the best membranes, by the way, because people don't even think about what the membranes are made of, all this stuff. But also, it allows you to inhale the gas. And that's very important. Inhaling the gas and drinking the water, they both have their place. But in my protocols, I integrate both, which is nice that the machine does both. Because if it didn't do both, now I got to have two machines. You know what I mean? And that's no fun. And for dementia and Alzheimer's is where I've seen some of the most incredible things in regards to the inhalation.
Okay. Yeah.
There's neurological issues, brain fog, also for the eyes, the sinuses, the lungs, stuff of that nature.
Yeah. And it's probably a bit too much of a big question because you said it's a complete protocol. But if someone's interested in this, and I'll leave all the links to everything we've talked about, and so people can do more research themselves and look at all the devices that you would point them toward. But what's starting off point? Let's take me. So I've got I think before we started I said I've been drinking spring water, which at least gets lab tested, so it's cleaners can, yeah, okay, cleaners can I'm going to reassess that after this conversation. So okay, with me reassessing it, let's say I'm going to invest in a top machine. What do I do? So I need to clean the water, I need to hydrogenate it. Can I just drink it? Can I just drink it as normal? Is there anything else?
Well, this is what I would do. So first, yes, I like the absolute cleanest water. Another thing that I would tell people to avoid, at least what I avoid, as far as hydrogen machines. I talked about plated metals, machines made in China. I do not like machines that use stainless steel. So stainless steel plates is another one, or uses something called lye or sodium hydroxide. It's the main ingredient in Drano. They, believe it or not, people use that to make hydrogen. And then there's something called Brown's gas. I am not a fan of Brown's gas at all, based on actual data. Brown's gas is not medically approved or used in Japan. It's pure hydrogen. If they ever need to use oxygen, they use pure oxygen. They don't just do what Brown's gas machines do. So that's just to clarify that. As far as what I would do, this is actually what I do. One, I clean my water completely, which is very cheap. And by the way, it's cheaper than buying bottled water. Way cheaper. You get yourself a good carbon distiller. You clean your own water. Anything that's in your water, you're pretty much going to get it out through that process. And that's important because we just discovered a new contaminant in water recently. Again, the things in our water, I'm not even going to start because the list is so long, you won't believe what's in the water. Not to mention the pharmaceuticals that are in the water. I'm going to name the top 3 pharmaceuticals, meaning the highest levels in water. Antibiotics, so you know what that does to your gut and your body. Women's contraception, so what that does to you hormonally. And antidepressants. And I'm not making any claims, but there appears to potentially be data that antidepressants potentially lead to Parkinson's. So
yeah, I read something recently. Yeah, no, it's pretty startling actually. Some of the research coming out on that.
And some of the data suggests, I believe, 1 in 2 roughly are antidepressants. That is crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. A whole other discussion, but that is just crazy.
Especially when data shows that a 20 to 30 minute walk every day appears to work better than any antidepressant in existence.
Yeah.
And that's just normal walking, you know.
Or maybe why are you depressed? Like as opposed to
that's the other I completely. And so if there is this much in our water, that's because that many people are taking this stuff. And it's going through the body, into the water. And if you think that your average water filter is going to filter it, and I'm going to give you a dirty little secret about the water industry. And, you know, hydrogen and water industries hate me because of the things I discover and uncover. But a porous filter, which is what pretty much everybody uses, whether it's a carbon filter or a reverse osmosis filter, they're porous. You know what I mean by porous, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Explain it I do, but yeah, just explain it for.
Bunch of little holes so that water goes through its hole, trying to hold the contaminants back. If you test the water with a brand new filter, the water may test here. But every 100 or 200 or 1,000 gallons, the quality of your water is continually going down.
Mm.
And then they will change the filter every 5,000 gallons or 10,000 gallons. You're not getting the best water every single time. It's always getting worse, right? And then people who don't change their filter on time, and God knows what's in there, and the bacterias and the molds.
It's stored it up as well by that point.
Exactly. With carbon distillation, it's the same every single time. I think I even have a chart on this. So that's another thing that's really important to look at. Now, whenever people complain about prices or whatever, it's just, I guess I don't have the chart, but it's just too important to me these days. My health, clean water. All right. So you got the clean water. Then you want to, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask very quickly because a pushback on clean water on water which is completely purified is that it's void of any minerals. Do you add any minerals, or are you getting to that? Sorry.
There's multiple ways to go about it. I don't think when you say minerals, here's where it gets tricky again. People don't understand that there's things like inorganic minerals, organic minerals. There are different kinds, and really, in my personal opinion, you're going to want to get the majority of your minerals from your food, more than your water. And minerals, here's an interesting study for you, and part of my protocol too. Minerals appear to work synergistically with fiber. So one of the techniques that I was doing, and 3 years after I've been doing it for so many years, they did a study on it. So I was like, oh my God, let's see if I was right. Because sometimes you do things that weren't right. I was adding minerals, not necessarily to my water, and I do, but very little once in a while. We'll get into that in a second. I add minerals to my smoothies because I make these smoothies with fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. I make some, that's how I get all my nutrients. It's like my vitamin. I make a vitamin or whatever. So when I do that, I would add minerals. Well, that's what they did in this research study. And what they discovered, apparently by accident, they didn't even do it on purpose, people's bones were rebuilding. Mineral absorption and nutrient absorption is through the roof. Why? Because I paired it with fiber. And before I even drink the smoothie, 30 minutes before, I load up on my hydrogen water. So I get my hydrogen going, and then I drink my smoothie, and I do this every single day for breakfast. That's my breakfast. That's how I get all my vegetables in, because of the study that shows that vegetables help regulate blood glucose also. So that's why, because who wants to eat vegetables for breakfast? So I ended up making smoothies,
Yeah.
So that was kind of wild. Now, as far as minerals for water, I put a drop in the container that catches my distilled carbon filtered water. So I put a little bit of minerals in there sometimes, not every single time. But like I said, I'm mostly interested in getting it from my food because, like, if I wanted iron, I probably wouldn't grab a piece of iron and suck on it. I probably wouldn't do that. But plants have this magical thing where they pull these minerals and nutrients from the soil and almost convert them somehow into the actual food. To me, it seems more bioavailable. It seems safer. The minerals I purchase from a company called Concentrates, where they remove almost all the salt and they just have like the pure minerals. And, I mostly add them to my smoothies, but yeah, I put them in water once in a while. And the Japanese do some crazy things with minerals also. But hot spring minerals and minerals from the ocean are typically the places where I like to get, those type of minerals. Of course, in Japan, there's also a lot of hot spring bathing. A lot of minerals come through osmosis.
Through the skin. Yeah. You have the, do just with the Quinton, do you like the Quinton vials? Do you know them? Quinton?
No,
it's a French, it's basically seawater that's meant to have the cleanest form of mineral profile that the body needs.
Yes, I have used a lot of different types of minerals that are from the ocean. Try to pull them from really low places or cleaner places. Yeah, no, I'm aware of it, and I've used many different kinds. And personally, I think there's more than one good company that does minerals, so that's totally. It's just weird that in the world, and same thing with distillers. There's many good distillers. It's just that the hydrogen machines, I don't know what the deal is with hydrogen machines. Nobody seems to want to make them right, because it cuts into the profit. I found that out also, that there's a lot of companies. It's kind of funny. I've talked to people who have different companies that sell the bottles, the pills, all sorts of stuff. And they'll sell those products. But what I found after talking to a lot of them, for themselves, they use the Hydrofix. So they use something different than what they're actually selling. And I thought that was pretty funny,
That
actually.
tells you everything.
It does. And I've asked people about it, and they say, look, there's not enough profit margin because they're expensive to make, obviously, the machine. They use the highest end components. And I mean, but they're the same price as a lot of other hydrogen machines, but they're, in my opinion, highly, highly superior. And of course, every machine gets lab tested and certified from the Holy Hydrogen Company, which is a big deal because nobody does that. No hydrogen company lab tests every single machine they sell and then certifies them. It's way too expensive and too tedious, but this company does it. And so there's a reason that they're the most well known and number one in Japan. They're hydrogen junkies and geeks, you know. So I appreciate for us who want to get the best.
So, just to clarify, distill the water to remove all the things that you've been talking about.
Yeah.
If well, from this conversation, you should be looking to invest in a Hydrofix by Holy Hydrogen, or okay. So if that's currently price prohibitive for someone, is there anything else you'd recommend below that? I mean, that
Well,
they
so
could
this,
do.
yeah, I mean, obviously, my recommendation basically is look, for people who say, oh, I can't afford this. One, well, in my opinion, you can't afford to be without clean water. Like, you need clean water. That's just foundational. Find a way, figure it out. Don't buy that plane ticket and go on that vacation, or don't buy those fancy wheels for your car. I mean, people spend so much money on a purse and other stuff. You know, where are your
Yeah.
values? Whatever you want. You know, your life, your body. But clean water is foundational. And then if you just can't get the hydrogen, obviously you get into exercise and you get into, you know, clean diet. It's like people who say, well, what if I can't, you know, afford organic food? You know how many people I see just waste food all the time? It's like, okay,
Hmm.
try to waste less and buy really high quality food and be efficient with it and make sure to eat it all and not waste anything. You know, it's all about priorities and, you know, how important it is to you. And I do think you made a good point when you say, you know, it's going to cost you more in the end, both from suffering and then financially. And working in the quote unquote medical establishment as long as I did, I know how much doctors can't solve. I mean, you may think, oh, you know, if I get this disease, they'll solve it. No, the favorite thing that the medical establishment likes to throw at you is pain pills. Oh, that hurts. Here's some pain pills. God knows how those affect you, right? We all know that road.
Hmm.
Or here's some anti-inflammatory. You know, here's a steroid. I mean, do you even understand the long-term ramifications? And you're not really solving the problem. You know, I just talked to another client yesterday, you know, with diabetes, and they're tired of using insulin, spending the money on the insulin, and they're like, I really want to solve this. You know, it just becomes such a headache. You know,
Hmm.
I value my health. You know, everybody else will just have to go through life the way that they want to go through life, I guess.
Yeah, look, I feel that people, yeah, okay. Unfortunately, we have a culture where people don't value their health, and they think that, well, they don't value it until they lose it. I think that's the thing. Then when they lose it, they realize how. Yeah, I mean, but unfortunately, human beings, we seem to need to run right into that brick wall at full speed to work out that it's hard and it hurts. just because we're really evolved. And then the other thing with the health is that they've also brainwashed. You know, you're brainwashed to believe that the authority holds all the keys, and it's that disempowerment that they have the answers as opposed to you have the answers, and it's your body that heals anything. And it's not to diminish. I think obviously everyone would agree that Western medicine is incredible for acute conditions, uh, broken legs, car accidents, you know,
Of course.
and diagnostic tools, like incredible. But if you're talking long term health, then that's incumbent on every one of us to champion ourselves. And then once we let it get to the point of where we're not operating properly and we've got some chronic illness, you can't. It's also unfair to turn to the medical establishment and say, "Well, fix this," and you're like, "Well, you've just spent 30 years eating terrible food, not exercising, drinking polluted water. Why is it
Yeah.
like, what can we do? We can't do a lot. We can just, you know, help you painlessly pass away." But they was it's the whole thing is great. Like we're sort of like don't take any responsibility as well, and then because a lot of fingers in the wellness community is pointed at Western medicine for good reason. You know, it's I think obviously pharmaceutical companies have gone in there and basically run the show now to a large part, but it's also what do you want them to do for we need to look a lot larger than just that. You're talking about a lot bigger
Like
frame.
it's like brushing your teeth. It's like, hey, I'm going to go 30 years without brushing my
Yeah,
teeth.
and then go to the dentist and he needs to fix them, and it's just like no, we
And
can
then,
give you some dentures.
yeah, give me some teeth. And it's like, all they do is give you fake stuff, right? They glue them in there, they screw them in there, they, God knows what
Yeah,
they,
yeah.
it's no fun. Everybody prefer to have real teeth. I prefer to have real teeth,
Oh
you
God,
know?
imagine what those screws are doing into you, having metal screwed into the bottom plate of your mouth.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan, you know?
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, let's finish on a high. But great. Look, there's been so much. I'd love to get you back because there's. I need to listen to this and see what points and see what comes up after digesting it. I'll leave everything that you've mentioned for products and as I mentioned, just ways for people to reach you in the show notes. Is there anything I haven't asked you or anything you'd like to finish with for people?
You know, there was one thing actually I was going to say earlier too. I was saying how I like to observe nature,
Yeah.
and nature has a lot of answers, in my opinion. That's how I realized how to clean the water, was the distillation. And then I looked at machines and lab reports to back it all up. And one of the interesting things too is that it appears that nature also makes hydrogen water, which I thought was interesting. It doesn't make Brown's gas. I know people are really into that, but it doesn't make hydrogen tablets, but it does make hydrogen water. Have you ever heard of a place, and there's more than one place that does it, but have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or
Yes.
Lourdes?
Yeah.
And so it's the healing waters of Lourdes, and they saw so many people getting better from this water, and they thought it
Yeah.
was placebo. So they started tracking people and realizing that people were really overcoming medical issues. Well, the Japanese discovered through a lot of research that that water has high levels of molecular hydrogen. So I thought that was very interesting.
That's
And
fascinating because they're
that was,
documented by the church. People don't know that. Like they're listed as miracles. You know, under it's fine, great, but that's really interesting that's because it's the hydrogen.
and how did and as I was telling you before, there's a spiritual component
Yeah.
to life, to hydrogen, and even water. Like there's a weird verse in scripture that says, and the voice of God is like the sound of many waters, like water.
Hmm.
And there's just so much stuff like that. And I just find it extremely fascinating. And I mean, the only things that I recommend to people always ask me this question. Yes, I recommend a carbon distiller so you can clean your own water, meaning you don't have to rely on somebody delivering you water or buying these bottled water sitting in jugs, whatever. It's more expensive at first, but in the long term, and I've calculated it, it's about 6 months. After 6 months, the machine pays itself off. And after that, you're actually just saving money.
Yeah.
So having your own carbon distiller is, in my opinion, super important. And it's cheaper in the long term. Second, obviously, the holy hydrogen machine. The hydrogen machine makes the water, the gas inhalation. But I mean, you don't have to do this one, but you really need a good blender. With as many smoothies as I make, you got to have a really good blender. And there's more than one good one. But I don't know if you've ever heard of these guys. I love their lab reports too. The website is void-system.com. And if it's not that, it's void-systems.com. I don't remember if it was with an S or without, but I think it doesn't have the S. So void-system.com. They have these blenders, and we were talking about oxygen, remember? It sucks the oxygen out of
Mm.
Have you seen these vacuum blenders?
I didn't know what the name was. Yeah, but I think I've seen Lou Corona who's used one. Yeah.
And I thought it was bogus. I thought this is a scam. And then I saw the lab data and I was like, oh my God, this stuff is real. And I had a Vitamix. So I used them both and seen the differences. And there is a difference. And you taste the difference, you see the difference. So that was kind of interesting one. It's the discount codes I have are always the same, which is Uprising 144K. If
Yep.
people so those are the three kind of main products. Basically, the last one that I like is it's a Purium powder. I think the website's called ishoppurium.com, but I don't think you can get them in Australia, sadly. And that's literally how I get my nutrients. It's all food, and I don't even take a multivitamin. The
Mm.
only supplement, and it's in a liquid form that's ionic, which is important, and that's just vitamin D. Vitamin D is the only thing that I just can't get enough from my food. It's just, you just can't. And so I put that in the smoothie. It's the only thing that I really, really add. And it's super cheap. So,
Yeah.
but that's like my protocol, very simply put, nothing crazy, nothing complex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which is the best thing. It's
that's the other thing. You mentioned Lou. It's funny. I mean, I love Lou, and I'm not definitely not saying anything negative about Lou, but I've done his protocols, and God,
yeah, the
I think it's impossible. I did it for a long time, and I just got exhausted, and it was too expensive. And I'm
well,
like,
there's so much juicing.
oh, it's terrible because you
Yeah.
need. By the way,
It costs a
Lou,
fortune. I've done a juice fast for a long period. It costs like, oh my God. But not only that, I think I got RSI from like push. I got like an angel juicer, which is they take
well,
a lot of downforce with the wood, and they're amazing because they're so slow and they masticate everything beautifully. But like, I just like the I was so over juice, like just having to juice. I'm like, oh my God. And then the amount of money and the amount of what, and then looking at all that fiber, I just felt guilty. So now I just water fast now. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't. That's so much waste.
I exactly, and that's why it just didn't make any sense to me. But the more I've learned about fiber, it's so
It's
important.
so important. Yeah, yeah. Like just water fast. Like just unnecessary. Just I would look. I think juice. Go off piece quickly, but like juice is it's good if you've not been introduced to fasting before, and at least you're getting calories, and it's a nice way to ease your way into doing a water fast. But
And I'm going to share a secret with you. I invented this one too.
hmm,
I call it the hydrogen fast.
I was going to say now that I'm thinking of a water fast, it should be a hydrogen fast.
And then if you choose to take it to the next level, what they call dry fasting,
Yeah,
then you can use the hydrogen gas
gas
inhalation.
machine. Yeah,
I mean, it changes all these fasting techniques. It just hydrogen is just amazing. And then if you have the proper equipment with the proper water, I would never do this if you don't do it correctly, but I have special protocols you can do for like your eyes, for example, your
mm,
ears, even skin conditions. Like I said, this one particular medical center, there were some really amazing things that they were able to do with the hydrogen technology. I'm going to be releasing a video in the near future about it. Craziest conditions that doctors couldn't solve. And after they saw this technique that I created for it solve it,
mm.
now they're like, what did you do? Like, this is impossible. You've been working on this patient for like a year. And so
I've
there's,
seen. No, I was just going to say I've seen it anecdotally with people who are not because there's hydrogen in fruit and vegetables, isn't there? When our bodies we eat them. So, and I've seen people just go to a very high, clean, much more fruit, cut out all the other stuff, and they've cured. 5 years of going to dermatologists with terrible eczema on their body, within sticking to this, and 6 months later, it's completely gone
yeah, and not to mention, this was really wild, soaking fruits, vegetables,
in the
nuts
hydrogen.
in the water. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw it shocked me because, again, I thought it was going to be a scam. The hydrogen appears to go into the vegetable or the fruit,
Mm,
and it literally transforms and makes it way more powerful. They would measure the antioxidants from
mm,
like an apple. Then they would soak the apple for like 20 minutes and measure it, and it was just like off the charts. Like, what? Stuff's going into the food. So I believe hydrogen is going to change the world, both agriculturally, medicinally,
mm,
obviously energy too, by the way,
mm.
because it's a form of energy and it's infinite, basically. There's just so many things we can do with this stuff. And so the fact that it works on the body the way that it does is just, it's a thing of beauty. Clearly, nature does it. Stars, water, whatever,
Mm.
light, food. It's all around us. It's
Let's
beautiful.
let let's finish with the cliche that we are made of stardust. So there we go.
There you go. And we do produce hydrogen, by the way. Our bodies do produce it.
Mm,
As you get older, you're making less and less of it. So
mm.
it's really important to, keep your body as healthy and as strong as it possibly can be. So
Greg, thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation, and appreciate your time and all of the work you're doing. It's just vitally important. And I will, for everybody, there was a lot in that. So everything we discussed will be in the show notes so you can dig further. And Greg, I'd love to have you back to jump into some more. And by that point, I will have all the devices and I can report back to you from.
uh, I appreciate you having me on. And I just want to tell anybody out there who's listening, if this helps even just one person, then I appreciate you having me on, because one of the things I hate the most is seeing other people suffer, or just knowing that there's suffering in the world, because I've been through my own, and it just ruins your life. And I think it's hard to share in the love, like being good to people and all this, when you don't feel good, or if you're sick, it's hard to be in a good mood.
Oh, for
And so,
sure. Yeah.
so I really appreciate you allowing me on, and I hope that this helps,
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
hopefully one person, but if it helps anybody out there. And obviously, I highly recommend help out people by sharing this information, by talking to people about this, subscribing and all that stuff. It's all free, and you're supporting this information getting out. So I appreciate what you do, brother.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Greg. Thanks so much.